Hey everybody, welcome to Lavanya. And here we are with Nico Martens again to be talking with us about emotional intelligence. And Nico, today we're going to be getting into resistance, right?
Mhm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's something I don't know about anybody else, but for me personally, at least, since we last worked together, I've been noticing a lot of like old stuff coming up. And what I've what I notice, and also in working with people, and this is biggest part that I deal with, it's not the emotions that come up or the feelings that come up that are the problem. What is the problem, for a better word, is our resistance to it. And then for whatever reason, the resistance can be like, oh, it could be a child like, oh, I'm not allowed to be angry. I'm not allowed to feel that bad feeling, bad feeling. Put the genie back in the bottle. I don't want to feel this. And quite frankly, that is really what pain really is. It's resistance. It's the damage that is done, for lack of a better word, is comes through our resistance to it. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard, I mean, that's such a good example, but if people are really, really drunk and they crash their bike or they fall and they're not hurt, why is that? Right? Because they're so relaxed. There's no resistance. And they just go with what is, and they just like brush it off. Or maybe with little children, it might even be a better, right? There's not that resistance initially. Boom, they hit something, and it's just brush it off. But then the resistance starts being built. Well, if you fall, you hurt yourself. You got to avoid this, right? And I don't know how many of you practice martial arts, but one of the first things they teach you is to not resist, right? Because if somebody punches you, if you completely are like water and absorb it, naturally the entire energy of that punch gets spread through your body and goes into the earth. What a good martial artist does, he finds out where the trauma is stored in your body, and he hits that, and that's where resistance is, and he gets vibrated. He creates like an ab reaction. So my teacher trains us in like some of like the Russian martial arts by Russian special forces, and all of that is about like winning the fight before you even physically engage. And that's where a lot of like the moves come from in the martial arts. Many people have forgotten that, or many of the lineages have forgotten about that, which is that it's always like, even in like the Russian martial arts that they are taught, it's about just triggering the emotion so the opponent just loses the will to even fight, and just walks away from it. And I'm bringing up martial arts up as an example, but it's very, very valid, because that's a good way to master these things. So oftentimes, we actually have to go against what we've been taught, because a lot of what has been taught to us, it creates a lot of resistance where we can be ourselves. Oh, these are good emotions. You got to be happy, child. You cannot have any sadness. Oh no, don't be angry. And remember, and I'm going to repeat a lot of things because we have new people on the call, and also it's good to hear these things over and over, that for every emotion that you stuff down, you spend the same amount of energy or more to keep it there. So anytime you feel resistance in your body, you're just expanding, expending like so much energy to keep it there, to where most people get into this like, man, I have no energy, because what you're doing is constantly all these emotions, all these feelings are being triggered within you. And rather than just allowing to be, and we'll get into that in a second, we we will, we will fight them, right? And what you resist persists. I'm going to keep on repeating that. While you actually, when you move into it, that is the way to process it. So I'm going to briefly go over 3 categories of what we instinctively resist. And I'm going to come back to this later. And we instinctively resist anything that threatens who I think I am in the world, or who you think you are in the world. We instinctively resist anything that threatens that. And we will fight tooth and nail. And even if it's unconscious, I mean, remember, a lot of these things that I'm talking about, they're unconscious things, right? And we will fight tooth and nail to preserve who you see yourself at, who we see ourselves at. And a prime example of that is lottery winners. We all know about it, and we hear these stories all the time, right? If somebody believes that they're not worthy and that they don't deserve anything, they can like win the lottery, and a year later or 2 years later, all the money is gone. Why? Because the self-image has not changed. If the self-image is still an image of like, I don't deserve to be wealthy, I don't deserve to be abundant. Ooh, wealthy people are mean, wealthy people are the scum of the earth, whatever that belief is, like your unconscious mind, your subconscious mind will go to work to make that match. Remember, your unconscious mind, your subconscious mind's job is to match the outer world to what you believe to be true. And if what you believe to be true is that wealth is bad, I am not deserving, it's gonna make sure that it gets rid of that money one way or the other, right? That happens unconsciously because it needs to match the outer world to what we believe to be true within. Right? So the second thing is we instinctively resist anything that threatens, how we believe the world sees us. So if people think that we're the successful person, we go through great lengths to hiding everything that shows otherwise, because we want to protect that image that we believe the world has of us, right? And one of the other, and that's the main important thing, is we instinctively resist anything that threatens what we hold to be true. So our deepest and core beliefs. Now, if you've been on other calls, you know that actually our belief systems are formed between age 0 and 5, mostly. And when I'm talking about age 0, I'm talking more like the Chinese model, the moment of conception. You have to count everything that happens in the womb, because you would not believe how many times I deal with people that have traumas, that have limiting beliefs today, and we keep going back, and you're in the womb. Something that your mother experienced, and at that moment, you are one with your mother. So whatever your mother experiences, I have that a lot with people that don't feel safe in the world. For whatever reason, the mother felt unsafe and had that feeling, and the child takes it on before it's even born and says the world's not a safe place. And we deal with that a lot. Yeah, Shira, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Is my sound working?
Yes, it is.
Yay. Okay, this is called a well song because it shifts a person. I celebrate resistance. Resistance is good stuff. Powerful, exciting, easy to do. I'm good at resistance. Try to put one past me. If love makes the world go round, resistance makes it stop.
Thank you. Yes, and one of the things is like, how often do we resist resistance? Then you really, now you've really created a loop for yourself. So to come back to instinctively, we resist what we hold to be true, we have to remember it's whatever gets there first, that it has the most power, right? So if your mom tells you at a young age that this shape is a circle, and you go to school and somebody says that is a circle, you're gonna fight it, right? And that's important to know, that if this resistance comes up as a feeling in your body, more often than not, you can assume that part of what you hold to be true, either about yourself, about another person, about the world, is getting challenged. That's why going into the feeling is so important, because the moment you go up here, that's a form of resistance. When the stories start coming to justify the feeling or why the feeling can be there, you can assume that that is resistance. So there's a fourth one there, and I don't want to necessarily call it resistance, but I would call it reactance. Anything that people tell us, there's a reactance to it. And you can see that physically, right? Somebody like pulls on your arm. What will 99% of us do unless we're trained? We pull back. That's because the physical, like the reptilian part of the brain, which is the most primitive, but also has the most power, takes over. So in martial arts, you know, instinctively, when somebody pushes on you, you push back. Now, this also psychologically, we do the same thing, because we perceive a loss of personal autonomy, of free will. How many of you have ever experienced that when somebody like gives you good advice, you just like resist it, right? And even though part of you knows better that that advice is really good advice, your initial reaction is like, you go against it. And that's a lot of what I deal with. People will come to me and say, I want to get rid of this and this and this, and we go into it and they just resist it. Now, here's an important one, whether you're dealing with yourself or you're dealing with other people, but like, write this down. We never resist what we conclude. What we conclude, what your neurology comes up with, we never resist. So that is the secret when you're dealing with other people, and we're going to go more in detail later in the call. When you deal with people that, you know, this is for the better, and your way of bringing it to them is telling them what to do, or you're attempting to tell yourself, you know, what to do, there's going to be that resistance. A way better way is through questioning, lead to the conclusion. Let your own neurology create what works for it, and the resistance will drop. That's why when I work in hypnosis with people, I'm never going to tell them what to see. I keep questioning their other than conscious mind, and I then make the imagery. I don't care what it says, you always go with it. Because when the neurology comes up with something, we automatically, that reactance, that resistance drops. Okay, so let's start within, right? Before we start changing other people or other people's resistance, let's go into changing our own resistance to what comes up, because a lot of that I feel is going on right now. I get people coming to me like, man, this emotion's coming up and I don't know where it's coming from and I need to change it. And it's like, but I personally, my opinion, right now, a lot of these deep emotions within us, these deep patterns are coming up, and people feel like they have to do something with it. While what I feel that needs to be done is they have to be witnessed, they have to be observed, they have to be felt, so they can go. And what holds us back is the resistance to them. So let's do a repeat from what we've already talked about before, which is the difference between emotions and feelings. to me, an emotion in a way is a form of resistance, because what really happens is like we have feelings in our body all day long, and it could be a rising feeling, it could be a contraction, it can be a sinking feeling, cold, hot, whatever. And most of these are taking place below the level of our conscious awareness. So we don't pay attention to them until they become so strong that they break the threshold of our pre-conscious awareness, of our conscious awareness. And that's when they become emotions, because then the mind gets engaged and says like, what is this feeling? And it starts going through his memory banks, and it creates a story around them. For me, that story is, those are like forms of resistance. So by going back into our body and perceiving within, that's when we get our power back. So if you pause for a moment and you just pay attention and just become aware of the beating of your heart, your in and out breath, it immediately starts shifting your perception. And know that every emotion starts off with a feeling in your body. And what happens is a certain feeling arises. What your unconscious mind, what your subconscious mind is doing that you're not aware of, I mean, most of us, it starts looking at the context and the situation you're in, and it starts searching through its memory banks until it finds a match for that particular feeling and a similar situation or context, and then it opens that file, and then it starts applying all those labels that are in that file to that. And now all of a sudden we have a name for that feeling. It's like, oh, I'm feeling sad. Right? And I know I'm explaining it quite simply now, but most of this stuff goes on for us. Like most of us are not aware of this because it happens so fast, and it's happening continuously that we never really question or just stop and say, what is that feeling? Like, ask yourself that, like, sometimes when you say like, oh, I'm mad or I'm sad or whatever, just like go into the feeling and ask yourself, what else could it be? I know it's really simple, but it stops that whole process of just automatically assuming unconsciously, yeah, this is what it is. So what's the difference between emotions and feeling? They're two very different things. Every emotion is a feeling, but not every feeling is an emotion. Feelings happen organic at a cellular level. Feelings of fear, for example, they're like cold and sinking. Feelings of anger, like hot and rising. And what happens is when these feelings occur, they send signals to a multidimensional body, to our unconscious, where we have stored all of our past experiences and relevant information. And when the feeling like meets those experiential archives, now an emotion is formed as an energy. And then our emotional body expresses this energy as an emotional reaction, usually with the verbal projections, that reinforce that. So the emotional field is also the body that translates and like integrates all these feelings that are going on. Because think about it, what would happen like if all your past experiences, your memories would suddenly like disappear? It would be similar to amnesia. Right? We would not remember how to react, only how to feel. And each of our experiences would be like that of a newborn. It's like a pure, it's like this glow of awareness. Right? No patterns have been enforced yet. And for me personally, I mean, my courses have been teach emotional intelligence, But personally, for me, it's all about going out of emotions. It's not about creating more of this emotion or less of that. It's actually releasing all emotions so we can come back to feeling, to truly feeling, which for me is our direct path to the divine. Because when we are in this like pure feeling state, in this place of energetic awareness, like we're no longer expending all that energy and all these emotional dramas that we live out in our life, and it's just a constant drain on our energy. And I can tell you, having seen this thousands of times, when you just allow the feelings to be the way they are, they change on their own accord. It's like when you say like, oh, I cannot feel this, or I have to like feel that, like that resistance to it is what keeps them around. So emotions, I always say they're like a pendulum. They go like this, and if you just go with them, they reach a maximum level and poof, they have to change. It's like Zane, it's like when you go absolutely yin, what happens? It becomes yang, right? When yang comes to its fullest deflection, its fullest expression, it flips to yin. It's no different. It's no different for our emotions. So, but I also know, like most of us, we're not so much human beings anymore. We've become human doings over, through our life path. So that's why I teach a lot of these active ways to resolve emotions, the color breathing, the spinning, the magic frame. But for me, they are a gateway to ultimately, I want all of you to just be able to be with these feelings and never even go into the emotion of it. And that's what I want to go with today. And before I go into that, like when you apply these techniques like spinning, like color breathing, like magic frame, they're really, really powerful to deal with emotions. But how many of you have noticed that when a feeling comes up and you have the technique, but there's still a resistance and you don't really want to do the exercise? Well, what you do with that is you make that feeling of resistance what you work on, okay? And you apply the techniques to that resistance. So let's say you have, some anger's coming up and you're like, yeah, I have this technique that Nico taught me, but I don't want to do it. Feel where you feel that and make that and rate that on a scale from 0 to 10. First, work the resistance until that's gone. And then you go into the actual emotion. And oftentimes what I see with people is that even when they work on the resistance of clearing that particular emotion, when they clear the resistance, the emotion is less. So it's the resistance to it. So what is the answer? It is to come back to feeling, to purely feeling the emotion, the feeling and releasing the emotion. So the only thing you need to do is the resistance to what you are feeling. Yeah, so June says, perhaps the reason we don't want to do it is because we're certain the feeling is justified. And yeah, that's what we came. I think you joined a little later, June. So we went through that like in the beginning when our worldview is challenged or what we believe to be true. That's when that resistance comes up. So yeah, that's a beautiful confirmation of what I covered early in the call. So what we're gonna do in this first process today is to learn or to retrain ourselves to just drop the resistance to what we're feeling and going more into what we're feeling. Because running away from our feelings is a form of avoidance. It's a form of resistance. And as we said before, what you resist, what you resist persists. And the opposite is also true. Like if you allow yourself to fully go into the feeling, it changes. It always does. And you see it in nature around you. Nothing is static. Right? Everything comes and goes. The only thing that never changes is constant change. And it's the same in our inner world. So what we're going to do is, and I'll guide somebody through this, but I'm just going to talk everybody through it. And then as I do it with one person, you can do this with yourself. And what you want to do is, let's say you pull up some emotion, whether it's sadness, whether it's irritation or whatever. Your question, like we've done so many times in other calls, is like, where do I feel this? Right? And you go to where you feel this. Let's just say I'm irritated. Okay, you're irritated. What does irritation feel like in your body? And you go in there, and the way I like to do it is we give the mind one task. And the task for the mind is to describe what the feeling feels like. Might be contracted, it might be hot, it might be cold, whatever is the first word, but do not let your mind go further. Well, this is a feeling of contraction because when I was a little child and I was on the Ferris wheel, this happened. And that's going into resistance, is going into avoidance. So as far as the process is concerned, I always like to give the mind a task versus trying to ignore it or trying to make it to stop. It's also resistance. So we're going to give it the task, like describe in one word what this feeling is. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into it more, and we're going to breathe into it and expand it until we notice a change. When it changes, what we're going to do is we're going to go into that new feeling. Hello, mind. You can, we need your help for a second. Describe in one word. Describe the feeling. And then something else might come, contraction. Great. What does that contraction feel like? And you let yourself feel it more. You breathe into it and you come into it more and more until it changes. Sometimes you might notice that it doesn't really want to change. What you do then is you expand it outside your body, if that's what needed. And you imagine yourself in the middle of it. And what you'll notice is it will change them. And the other thing that will happen is that sometimes you will come to a point where you can't even describe anymore what you're feeling. And then you just go with like, what does that feel like in my body? And you allow yourself to go more into that. So your mind has one task, name the feeling in one word, and then just follow the way it changes, drop into the new feeling, come up with one word and expand that. And you continue that until that what first started as a negative feeling or a non-desired feeling, you will notice that it will change to a positive one. Okay, so let's do a demonstration of that. Anybody want to play? Shira, step on up.
Hi.
Go. Hi. So yeah, and the cool thing with all this, and you've been on so many of the calls, is like none of us need to know what it is, right? That's the beauty of this. So you can pick anything because we're going into the feeling of it. So do you have something like that's bothering you?
Yes.
Great. I always love that. So what would you describe it as? Is it an emotion? Is it a feeling? How would you describe it right now?
It's a head trip forming an emotion, which then becomes a feeling in my body.
Excellent. So just tune into where you feel it. And what helps, you can put your hand there. You know, that helps you tune into it.
On
If-
the gut.
In your gut. Great. Yeah, that's where we store a lot of these emotions. So I want you to just tune into it and go into it.
Mhm.
And if you were to ask your mind to describe the feeling in one word, what might that word be?
Hot.
Hot? Great. So I want you to go deeper, allow yourself to simply go deeper into that hotness, you know, and allow it to expand. Breathe into it. And just allow yourself to feel more and more of that hotness. Allow it to expand through your body. And just stay with it. Keep breathing into it, allowing yourself to feel more and more of it. If you have to go outside your body, that's totally fine. Allow it to expand outside your body. And you'll notice it's going to shift into something new. When that happens, just let me know.
No, it's fixing to burn the house down right now.
All right. Then what do you notice in your body as you feel more and more of that hotness?
It's starting to evaporate and diminish.
Diminish. Excellent. Now, how would you describe that new feeling now since it's diminished? What would you describe that as?
Expansive.
Expansive. Wow, you got there fast. So
A relief.
a relief. So allow yourself to feel more and more of that like relief feeling, that expansiveness. Allow yourself to go into it. Breathe into it. Allow it to expand more and more. Notice what happens as you do that. Notice how it changes.
I become more comfortable in my body.
Comfortable. Beautiful. Now, what does comfortable feel like in your body? Allow yourself to go more and more into that comfortable feeling in your body. Expand.
It's
Mhm.
relaxed. It's
Relaxed.
warm instead of hot.
Warm.
There's even a kind of a lift or a rising to it.
Arising. Beautiful. So allow that rising to expand. Allow yourself to feel more of it. Breathe into it. Yeah.
I'm flying.
There you go.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Very, very nice.
Very nice. To go into that. And you can stop here, right? People, because it has already shifted. That was really fast. And that was great. But you see how quickly it changed?
Beautiful.
You drop the resistance. Right? That is the key thing. It's like fully, because did you notice in the beginning how your mind kind of wanted to go in a story of it? Right? Or wanted to find the meaning. Sometimes people, you might get images or you
Well,
might have a visual. Mhm.
Nico, this one, the story is vital because in order to handle a situation, I needed to be flat and I needed to not involve anger. It's a matter of principle, and that doesn't work with anger.
Well, see, those are all beliefs, right? But the core of it is to come back to the feeling of it and letting the feeling be what it is, right? Until you get to either a neutral or a positive place, because ultimately what happens is when you keep following that and you strip all the beliefs off, what you are left with is like your I am presence. It is your true self, which is always like, it's this amazing feeling. So Susie says, for me, it didn't release as fast as Shira, but I stayed with the feeling that the first feeling shifted. It started to release. Yes. Yeah, no problem, June. Thank you for coming. So yeah, that is true. So it doesn't matter how long it takes. Every change is change. We got to let go of this whole idea of scale. Ah, it's just a little change. That's another way that the mind will resist to change. Like, yeah, it changed, but it was only like this much. These are all stories. The other thing, what you might notice is that you might lose it sometimes, and your mind goes off into the storytelling and all the visuals and this and that. Don't worry about it. Don't try to pick it up, your original feeling. Don't try to go to your last thought. Just go with the train of thoughts and then go back. How does that make you feel right now? And pick it up right there. Okay. Anybody else wants to play? Jim? Oh,
Yeah, I
Jim,
do. I'll play. I always want to play.
yeah, let's do it. You have something?
Something, ask me the question. It's something that I'm just like resisting, right? Like
Yeah.
something I'm having a reaction to that's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I got something.
You got something? Perfect. Can you describe to us what this feels like to you?
An invasion.
An invasion. So let me ask you, when you feel this invasion, when you tune into this invasion, where in your body do you feel this?
My gut.
In your gut. Beautiful. So you can put your hand there, you can just tune in with your mind. So what do you notice when you tune into this feeling of invasion? What is the feeling in your gut? If your mind has only one job, which is describing one word, what would that word, what might that word be?
Rage.
Rage. Beautiful. So what I want you to do, and it's safe, I want you to just allow yourself to go into that feeling of rage. Breathe into it and simply allow it to expand. Allow it to become bigger and bigger. And you just stay with it. I'm just going to talk for a little bit to help guide through this. If you feel the need for it, just expand it outside your body into the room until you find yourself in the center of it. Sooner or later, you're going to realize that there's a shift, that there's a change. Just let me know when you have that feeling already.
Yeah, I got it. I got
Okay.
the shit.
So now this new feeling, Jen, that you're experiencing, how would you describe this in one word?
Fuel.
Fueled? Is that?
Yeah, fuel.
Okay. So what does that feel like in your body? Tune into that. Allow yourself to fully drop into that. Breathe into it. Breath moves energy.
Feels like a lot of potential for creation.
A lot of potential for creation. Now drop into that deeper. Allow yourself to feel that. Expand it. Allow it to expand out. Use your breath to make it bigger. To allow it to expand more. Notice the shift. What does this feel like now?
Relaxed and grounded.
Relaxed and grounded. Now go to where you feel that. Breathe into it. Expand that. Allow that to expand. Allow that to become bigger and bigger, stronger and stronger. And that's right. And then as you allow this relaxed, grounded feeling to become stronger and stronger, you might notice it's just shifted again. How would you describe it now in one word, what you're feeling?
like directed, guided,
Guided. Notice
open.
it. Open. Notice what that feels like. Allow yourself to drop deeper into that feeling. Expand it all the way around you. You find yourself in the middle of it. And then notice that shift again.
Mm-hmm.
What does it feel like now in one word?
Wisdom.
Wisdom. Beautiful. Expand that. Drop into it. Just allow it to expand bigger and bigger. Use your breath. It does this naturally. What are you noticing now?
Just like calm, like the ocean.
There you go. And once you get to that quote unquote positive feeling, more desirable feeling, you can milk it, right? You can go deeper and deeper into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
But
that's cool. You can go like on a total journey with that resistance. I mean, that's amazing.
yeah, isn't this amazing? Like it
I
was
mean,
a matter of minutes for it to shift.
yeah, and you think about, I could have been in this like mental circuitry of self-sabotage for like hours of days or
Yes.
years.
Mhm.
Thank you, Nico. That was amazing.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I know this one is like really, really simple.
Mm,
It's like, okay, oh, you're just telling us this, but it's often these simple things.
mhm,
And you get to a point, and this is how I work with this, because I teach you many techniques that are like, okay, you take it and you transform it.
yeah,
Ultimately, that for me is a stepping stone to come to this.
mhm,
Like my preferred method of dealing with emotions, with feelings is this, to just be with it until it transforms.
mhm,
Certain things have such amplitude. They've been there so long. They feel so intense.
mhm,
Like, not that this ever fails, right? But we might just not have enough time for it, or we don't want to deal with it. Do the other techniques. Magic frame it, spin it, do whatever, color breed it. But ultimately, if you can just come to this, to where
mhm,
you're like, ooh, rising feeling, expansive feeling, and just stay with that,
mhm.
that for me is like the ultimate way of being with these emotions. Releasing the emotion, coming back to the feeling, direct access to her divine, to her I am presence, constantly picking up different feelings. No
That's
reaction to it.
Nico, I want to remind people that in the Lavanya membership area in event replays, they can look at the instructional videos that we did that show people how to do the different techniques in like, 5 minutes. So people can find those there.
Mhm. Awesome. Marcia, you can unmute yourself.
As soon as, okay, I can feel the anger that I'm going through, but
Mhm.
as soon as I start to breathe, it goes away. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm really getting rid of the anger. You know what I'm saying? It sounds like you're trying to, I guess I'm supposed to be going through this great big technique, and it's like, no, I just have to remember to breathe when I'm angry.
All right. What you just brought up is a form of resistance. Your belief is that anger shouldn't be able to clear that fast. So your resistance is fighting you. It cannot be that simple. So it wants you to stay longer in it because you feel like, hey, I've carried this for 20 years. It should at least take 20 minutes to get rid of this.
Yeah, it's too quick.
Yes. So the proof's in the pudding, right? If you're right there, you're being with the feeling, and it releases that quick, awesome.
Huh.
Right? Because like you were with it and you're allowed to yourself to go into it. Now, Marcia, what you might realize down the road is like it's the onion, the peeling of the layers. Right? So it might have been okay for now. And this layer is gone, and then some feeling triggers a deeper layer. You be with it again. Right? So
Okay.
that's excellent that it's that fast. And yet, like all of you, it went really fast. Sometimes I'm with people for 10, 15 minutes for them to come to that point. Like, who cares? Even if it's 10, 15 hours, if it's gone, it's gone. But if it's 10, 15 seconds, that's great too. Right? So do you realize how you came from the feeling and it is gone? But now the mind, as its reactance, as its resistance to it, it's like, hey, if it's that simple, if we can let go of stuff, that what am I doing here? Like, it cannot be that easy. And it starts and you start questioning yourself. While if you're in the feeling and it's gone, it's undeniable.
Sure.
It's only when you pay attention up here that doubt starts coming in, right?
I would say 10 years ago, I probably would have taken me a lot longer, but now it doesn't take me as much.
Well, yeah, but look, you've continuously shown up. You've done all the work. I mean, I've seen you do the processes. So that's your work, right? Allow yourself to reap those benefits. Don't let your mind question them. You've been doing amazing and you're on this journey. And yes, it does become easier and easier. When you're new to these calls, go to the techniques that are in the membership area. They're very, very powerful. But no, for every single one of those that you clear, you come closer to your true self. That's what the Taoists say. In order to go forward, go backward. It's about becoming that child again, that baby, that firstborn that is close to the divine before all this stuff was layered on from people around us. That is not us. That is all this is. It's just peeling back the layers until you're like a child again in your feelings and experiences, but with the integration, with the wisdom of your life and the experience of you as an adult now, coming back to this childlike state. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Nico.
Thank you for showing up. Anybody else have a question about this process? Same.
I just want to share something. The other day, I've been in my Qigong program. I've been working on overcoming the reactive mode and move into true self response. And it's really quite a process. And what I discovered the other day was that I thought I had everything in place and everything under control, my emotions. And my dog got to me, my partner in crime, and he had been whining, and I couldn't drive him for very long without him whining. Have to pull over. What the heck is going on? And then I had an appointment I had to make, and he was resistant to coming in the car. I mean, it was just like suddenly this rage came up, this pocket of rage. And I released it, and it was gone, totally gone. But it felt good. You're just like, and not resist it. It just came out. The deal was done. It's just like in martial arts, you issue a strike. It's like springs from yin, boom, and then it's over. You fall back into yin. So I was aware of my judgment and shame when that happened. Like, I'm supposed to be more advanced than that at this point, but it dissipated. It was gone.
Yes, that's a beautiful example. It happened to me. It happens to me too. I've been at this for quite some time, and I've the same things. And it's basically it's a retraining ourselves. And how many of you have experienced this when you learn a new sport, or you have an old bad habit, and now you have to do it the proper way, but in the beginning, the proper way feels so off. You're like, this feels like so off, and like this, you don't really want to do it, and you want to go back to the old way of doing things. That's normal, right? Because our neurology learns a certain way to process things. So with all of these changes, like as you start making them, yeah, there will be resistance against it. But now you know what to do with it. Just like dropping into the resistance and not resisting the resistance, allowing yourself to feel it will undo that. And then you can move on. And Rome wasn't built in one day. Like these things you've been doing for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Don't expect like, okay, now I'm just gonna change all that in like 2 minutes. And it's like Zane, it's like you say, these are the really valuable moments when these things get triggered, these pockets of rage, whatever, anger, whatever it is. That's where the really gold is, where the gold is. Because what you're actually doing, you're reclaiming not only all that energy that you've pushed away there, but you're reclaiming also going forward all the energy you would waste on suppressing that, right? Because all these things that we repress, naturally nature seeks its balance. Feelings just want to be felt. So the act of bringing your consciousness there is really, really powerful, because when I deal with physical dis-ease, what you notice is if you have a body part where that is, or a particular part of an organ where that happens, what has happened is consciousness has withdrawn itself from that place. So simply bringing it back, feelings just want to be felt. Feelings do not want to have stories made up about it. That rationalization that happens, the stories, that is the resistance. So just allow yourself to feel the feelings again, and you will like reclaim the energy. Great. Any questions about that before we move on? Nope. Good. So what I want to go into is like, so first you always want to deal with resistance. All right. Let's say there's something you really want to do, or you know that you should do. Man, I should have like really like done my, I gotta really do my taxes, but I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. All right. Clear the resistance first. And then when that is clear, we can now accelerate this process. And Jen showed it beautifully. She went from rage, which is the wood element that, the anger, that's also the creative force. Remember, we're in the spring, we're in the wood element. The energy is rising, right? So when we shift it from anger, it becomes indeed this pure creative force. And once the resistance is cleared, I'm going to teach you something that we call the emotional bonding checklist, which is a big fancy term of like, get in touch with the feeling underneath of what it is that we really want. And just remember this one that I told you early on. Anything that people tell us, we have a natural resistance to, even if it's good advice. So, and that's also you trying to talk yourself into something, right? It's the same thing. It's an outside, your body, your being perceives it as an outside force trying to tell you what to do. We resist it, but we will never resist what we conclude. So for those things that you really want, you have to really find out why you want it, because if we try to change an emotion to being rational, it creates that reactance. But if we get in touch with the really underlying emotion of something, that is not there. So So for everything you can conceive of, everything, even if it's something you don't have, or you never actually done, there is an emotion attached to it. Like, you might not be aware of this, but within your mind, there's this thing going on. Oh, once I have this thing, then I'm gonna feel this. The secret is to allow yourself to arrive what that is and come into that emotion, because you can have anything you want, whether it's like a physical thing, whether it's like just like an experience, but you first got to be the person that that can happen to. And that is like being in that emotional state that allows you to have that manifestation. I mean, you've heard it a lot, like, oh, you got to talk as if it's already there, right? You got to talk as if it's in the past. Well, that's only half of it, because if you're just talking about it and if you're not feeling it, it's not going to come. Your feeling is the vibrational state of your reality. Remember, the talk, visualize it and it will come to you. Well, not sure about that, because you can visualize it. If you don't really feel it, you're not in that state that matches the vibration reality where that can show up. All right, so I'm gonna walk you through like a little process that you can use with other people when you encounter resistance, but you can also use it on yourself. So yeah, anybody want to volunteer to kind of to show this, or anybody have anything that you would like to change? Nobody has anything.
I
Say
have I have a lot of things, but oh, good, Zane.
yeah, or
No, I was gonna say I want one of you to do it. So Zane, go.
Go ahead, Zane.
Okay, if I understand it correctly, there's an issue I've had with, it's a procrastination issue, but behind that is a fear of like, what if I can't access this financial information that's all in cyberspace? Like this code to get into it and everything, this investment I had made, that's a story. Anyway, it's like this, like, for some reason, I'm not getting to it. I fear that it'll be gone. Yeah, I won't be able to do it. It's like I'm trying something new. I took a risk, and now I'm paying the price, because the price is I've resisted it and it's heating up, like electricity.
Yes, and procrastination is easy to deal with. You just postpone it, right? But so let's go into your example. Like what can I help you with today?
Well, just bringing attention to it with from your vantage point, and maybe you could offer some openings for me that I can just break the ice with this. Because it's as things go, it just feeds the monster. It just becomes bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
That's
so
what I'm
how,
aware of. Yeah.
So how would you describe what it is that you want to change?
I think it boils really down to my my approach to it, like how I'm holding it. Like suddenly I want to be able to just put it in perspective and just see it as a game where I can just not take one big bite. I could take little nibbles with it and just see what it's like, taste it before I go into it. But to break the ice, I need help, and that's just encouragement to break that ice, because it's a fear thing. Like I'm not adequate to handle this aspect in the game of life.
So what is it that you want concretely?
Just a joyful pursuit of like seeing it as a game, as a puzzle, as
seeing what as a game.
Just approaching this and addressing it and facing it, and just.
Can you tell me what the it is? I'm sorry.
Okay, it's this this work with the computer in cyberspace and using passwords and this stuff to get access to these funds that are in cyberland, but it's this whole thing. And
Mhm.
so I just, during the time of COVID and all, I just put some money aside and so it's been there, but I have to, access that, like solve the, I have it all written down and I haven't even, I'm so afraid that it's not gonna be there when I get there. It's like this mental block.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So what's important to you? I'm curious, like what's important to you about having that resolve?
Well, first important is that I can face that, if I'm,
Face it?
I can
Mhm.
face this hoop and go through it with courage.
Mhm.
Like
And,
my little boy just saying, "Oh, I don't know how to do this,"
and just so I understand you better, if you can face it, right, and move through this, what would that do for you?
Oh, right now in this moment, I would feel like a buoyancy,
Buoyancy,
and a more of a self-confidence.
self-confidence.
Yeah, this is like, it's like the universe just targets these points that need to be worked on, and this is it right now. Yeah.
Buoyancy, self-confidence.
Buoyancy, self-confidence,
Mhm.
a lift to my step,
Mhm.
an uprightness of my posture. Maybe, I mean, all these physical things, the response to facing it. And
So let's say, how would you know that you faced it, you moved through it, and you now have this buoyance and self-confidence?
well, it's like getting to the, crack in the shade, safe, and getting that,
Hey,
and knowing that I can always, there is help out there, or I did lose this contact person who was supposed to show me, he disappeared. So to trust, I guess it's a trust that
trust.
through my facing it, that the universe provides. Like, this is walking my talk, I've had to do this a lot lately, and it's just another piece of the pie.
Yeah. So I want you to notice something. When I say these words, face it, move
Yeah.
through it,
Yeah.
safe, buoyancy, facing it, move through it, safe, buoyancy, self-confidence. What do you notice within you?
Well,
Say,
I feel an energy flow through my body more. Yeah. Yeah, it kind of puffs out a little bit. It's like a turgid kind of feeling full. Yeah, more full. Yeah, rather
yeah.
than shrinking in certain aspects.
So repeat these words to yourself out loud. Facing it,
Facing it,
move through it,
through
buoyancy,
it,
safe,
safe.
self-confidence. Now, from this feeling, from this flow, I want you to think back about your original thing. What do you notice now?
Well, there's more spaciousness. There's not a wall. Like the walls close in, it's a vortex of sorts. So I feel like the doors are open, it's breathing. It has some breathing.
Yes, exactly. From this energy, what can you do right after this call to move towards that?
I would say move into the first step of I just biting a little, take a little nibble of it.
What's that nibble? What's that first?
And that is actually doing it, like getting to my files and take the first step.
All
Go
right.
to and look around, and then, oh, maybe I'll go a little bit further this time.
That's right.
And then stop. Okay, that's enough, and feel good about it. And then I can always come back to it.
Go do that first step after this call.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Repeat those words to you. How
Yeah.
many of you noticed what I did here? Anybody?
Question.
Thank you, Zane. That was awesome. You did great. Yeah, go ahead, Marcia.
You just kept questioning him to where he had to keep figuring it out on his own, that he could do it.
Yes. What else did you notice when I asked him the question and he answered?
At first, he was very resistant to you,
Mhm.
and he didn't really want to say the words, and then eventually he was able to speak them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how many of you have ever heard of giving a person their words back?
Yes.
Reflective listening,
Oh, yeah.
echo technique. Remember, people never resist what they conclude.
Okay.
So all I did, Zane, is I was asking you a question, right? What's important to you about this? Like, important that I face it, move through it. Yes. So you can face it and move through it. Now, what you might not realize is when I give you those words, your brain lights up like a Christmas tree.
Okay.
Because you know what? People will never fight what their own neurology concludes, what they come up with. Right? So too often we're being taught in university and school, like, oh, let me rephrase what you just said. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Give the person their exact words back. That is the fastest way to create a rapport with somebody and for them to feel validated and to deepen the connection, right? So the way this process works, and Shira, I will come to you in a second. I just wanna talk through this for a minute. Like, so here's the magic recipe for a word. You soften it, you ask the question, you echo what they say, and you validate it, and then you ask again a deeper question. You echo the response and you validate it for them, and you go deeper and deeper. How many of you notice that at a certain point, feelings started to come up? I feel safe. I feel self-confident. That is what we're after in the emotional bonding, checklist. We want to get to where the person said, well, I would just feel I would feel safe. I'd feel self-confident. That is what you're really after. So the secret with anything you want to achieve after you've like worked through the resistance, you ask yourself those questions. And here are some good questions. So I'm first going to give you some softeners when you deal with other people, and this also works with yourself. I was wondering, why would you want this? I was wondering what's important to you about having this. I'm curious, what would having this thing, this experience do for you? Let me ask you this. How would you have known that you achieved it? Let me ask you this, just so I understand you better. These are all softeners, because the moment somebody says like, why do you want that? You're like, the resistance goes up. I'm curious, just so I get to know you better. What's important to you about having this? Do you feel the difference? And it's all about not triggering the reactance, the resistance in people. Softening it does that for you. I was wondering, I'm curious, just so I get to know you better. What's important to you about having them? Right? Let me ask you this. And then, like, let's say that you're a coach or you're a therapist or whatever. It's like, what brought you here today? What can I help you with today? What made you come and see me? And then it's all about paying attention. The first thing that comes out of their mouth, right? That is their neurology. And, you know, if you give the neurology its own words back, it cannot fight you. There's no way to resist it because you just said it. It's your own neurology that concluded it, not your mom or dad or the world, right? It's what and you're going to repeat it back. So whatever they say first, hey, what brought you here today? Well, I want to change this sadness. I want to change this sadness. You give it exactly back and you validate it. Yeah, I totally get that you want to change your sadness, right? And every time you say that word, the neurology get triggered, and deep down, there's this feeling, yeah, this person gets me. It deepens the connection, right? I feel heard. I feel understood. And then you can go into the next question, right? What's important to you? Just so I understand you better, right? You soften it. What's important to you about changing that sadness? I just came up with something now. Pay attention. Again, well, I would feel happier. Yeah, you would feel happier, you know? I get that. And then you can ask another question. So if you had that, if you were feeling happier, what would you do? What would that do for you? Right? And then they give you an answer. And you just keep deepening and echoing back. And you want to make note mentally of what those first responses are. Those words are key triggers to the brain, to where I can just go like this right now and say like self-confidence, facing it, moving through it, self-confidence, safe, moving through it, facing it. I guarantee you, Zane's brain is lighting up like a Christmas tree. Right? And this is what you can use to, also for yourself. Because too often we're like, I don't know, I want a boat, I want this car, I want that house, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I want to travel to that country. We do not get in touch deeply enough with the underlying emotion of it. So there's no fuel there. There's no real emotional connection to it. So take something, right? So this is kind of like an emotional, like, for a better word, like a motivational drill. And think about something you want. Let's all go through this as a group, right? Just think of something you would want, whether it's an experience, whether it's like a physical thing, whatever it is. Okay. So if you were to have that, what it is you want, what's important about that to you? And notice what comes to you, and then say it out loud. Right? Hearing it out loud, right? You will really activate, and then you go deeper, right? Whatever that answer was, just so I understand myself better, like, what would having that do for me, right? The answer to the previous question. Notice what comes up. That first response, say that word out loud. Right? I would have more peace. Oh, just so I understand myself better. What would having more peace, why is that important to me? What would that do for me? And keep coming back. And you write all those words down. And just keep going through this. Right? Just keep. You can ask yourself, how will I know when I have that? Notice what comes to mind. Note that down. And in the end, I guarantee you, all that you're going to be left with, a few levels below that initial, what it is that you want, you're going to end up with a bunch of feelings or feeling states on your piece of paper. And now all I want you to do is just all those that you've written down, I want you to say them out loud to yourself. And I'm just going to make stuff up here to give you an idea. Peace, happiness. Say them out loud. Simply repeating those words back to yourself, or when you're dealing with another person, the more they take over your neurology. And those words will be linked like to those feelings in your brain. You're going to a trance. Whether you realize it or not. And your neurology lights up like a Christmas tree. And then when you really have used those words, it's a linguistic way to get yourself in a certain state. Now I want you to go back. And then from this feeling state, I want you to look at what that is that you wanted and how you feel about it now and how attainable it is. And what you'll notice is that it feels way different, right? Because you're no longer coming from that vibrational state of like, oh, this thing is separate from me and I don't have it and I really want it, but I can't have it, right? You've actually emotionally primed yourself to the state where you feel like, yeah, I can totally have this. Yeah, I want to have this. And yeah, right? And that's like, when people ask me, how do I deal with this or this? I never give them an answer straight away. So let me ask you some questions. So we get to this feeling state, like, well, I would just feel peaceful and my relationship be more harmonious. You'd feel peaceful and your relationship be more harmonious. And you keep priming that level until they're there. Now let's look at that question. What would you answer to yourself? Oh, it's easy. I got to do this. Right? Because like, what was it, Einstein or whatever that said you can never solve problems from the consciousness that created it? The fastest way to change your consciousness is change how you feel. That shows you the level of consciousness that you're at. So I say, if you're dealt with a problem and you're like, I can't solve this, and you're not seeing the solution, well, you're going about the wrong way. Your first job is to raise your consciousness to the level where the solution exists by changing your feelings. Right? There's many ways of doing that. I gave you a linguistical way, but you remember like the last call when we worked with how you can use your physiology and your breathing to change your state? Do that, right? Let's say, yeah, I want to solve this problem with my mom, like her and I are always in contention. Great, you keep digging. What would you all ultimately want? I want to just be at peace and feel harmonious with her. Imagine a time when you felt really at peace, totally harmonious with the world and people around you and with yourself, right? Use your breathing, use your physiology to really get into that state. Use the color breathing where you like point to where you feel it. And all of these, for those that are new, they're all in the membership section. See what color it is or what colors it is. Imagine those colors or color above your head. Breathe it through your body. This is a vibrational way to get yourself into the state where the solution lives. That is always your first job if you're dealing with something that you don't know the answer to. Put yourself in the state that you feel you will have when this is resolved. And you start there. And when that's fully anchored and you cannot change it, now you ask yourself the question again. What's the first step I can take to go there? So, just to recap, to come to this emotional bonding checklist, or when you're dealing with somebody, you soften. I'm curious, just so I get to know you better. What's important to you about? And these are important questions you can write down, whether you're dealing with somebody else or with yourself. What's important to you about ... having this resolved, having this changed? Another really good one is, how do you know that you have it, that the change is complete? And pay attention. And then the master sequence, the recipe is soften, ask, echo the exact words back that the person gave you and validate them. And feel more peaceful. Yeah, you'd feel more peaceful. Feeling peaceful is important. And then you soften again. I'm curious. If you feel more peaceful, what would that do for you in your life? Oh, my relationship would improve. Yeah, your relationships would improve. It's important to have good relationships. Right? To keep softening it, echo it, and giving it back. But the most important thing is you pay attention to the words that the person gives you or that your own neurology comes back with. Make sense? All right. Any questions, any comments about this observation. Shira, I know you had one earlier. I don't know if we addressed that or not, but I just want to open it up to everybody and ask any questions you might have, actually.
I was actually applauding what you said, so it was a hands clapping, not a raised hand. This is a chance to give you many, many thanks for this valuable lesson today.
Thank you. How about everybody else? Was this useful for you? Yes. So yeah, we're an hour and 20 minutes. Nice. Lose track of time. Any questions that anybody might have? Just need to process it. Yeah. And for those of you that are new to this, know that processing can go on and go on for quite a while. All right. Just be with that. Be with those feelings. No, anytime people start breaking out in sweats or whatever, remember, don't resist that. That's all good. Allow yourself to process it. All right. Thank you, everybody, for showing up and doing this. This is how we change the world. All right. What we see out there is a projection from here, from our source through all the distortions, right? It's not to go out there and change the world and be more this or that. That's a form of resistance because you don't want to deal with what's here, right? All the people have to go out in the world and do these big things. They're really responding to something here. The fastest way to change something in the outer world is to change as closest to the source. The source is here, right? Change that and the whole world will change on its own accord.
All right, thank you, Nico. So beautiful. We're really appreciative of you. All right, everybody, I'm going to stop the recording.